A brand new season for Magic the Gathering Arena just started because the previous season ended at the end of February, and as a result, a lot of players have had their rank and their position reset, myself included, and that means the climb back to Mythic is once again underway, and sometimes to make that climb, you need some decks that win fast. And so for today's video, I'm going to show one of the decks that I've been playing a lot recently. I rather enjoy it. This is White Weenie, and this is the version that I have been running. So I'm going to talk a little bit about card choices, and then we're going to show the deck in action as well. So right out of the gate, you're going to notice there are an awful lot of 1-drops in this deck. That is by design. Dauntless Bodyguard is a great 2/1 body, and it's also a knight, which does matter for History of Benalia. I'm also running 3 Healers Hawks, 3 Legion's Landings, and 3 Rustwing Falcons. Now, I'm running the Hawks and the Falcons because I am prioritizing evasion. I don't want to deal with blockers if I don't have to, and they both do different things pretty well. The 1/2 body means that Rustwing Falcon will survive Goblin Chain Whirler, for example. Healer Hawk, on the other hand, with the lifelink, can help boost your life total quite a bit. We also have the Legion's Landing, which will create lifelink vampires, though they don't have flying, but it also will flip into Adanto the First Fort if you get some attacking creatures going, and that's pretty helpful because this deck only runs 20 planes, so having something else that will become a mana source is important. But the reality is the mana curve for this deck tops out at 3. I know you're seeing some 4s and 5s down here, but these are cards with Convoke, and so it's pretty rare that I'm actually paying the full cost for these. Everything that you're paying actual mana for tops out at 3. So again, we have a large number of 1-drops, and that is because of the bottom half of this list. So Venerated Loxodon is great when you can convoke 3 creatures and get to play it. So the ideal opener is, you know, turn 1 you play a 1-drop, turn 2 you play 2 1-drops, and then turn 3 if you Loxodon. At that point, if they don't have an answer, you're probably going to win the game unless they're on a similar deck or a similar game plan. It's just an explosive opening with a deck like this. If you don't have Loxodon, 3 creatures into Unbreakable Formation can be very strong. 3 creatures into Benalish Marshal can be very strong. And so you can kind of see where just going wide with a lot of bodies and then playing some of these cards that will buff them up can be a pretty big deal. History of Benalia is like delayed gratification, but it does create bodies, and because it creates bodies and it itself counts as a permanent, it's really, really good at trying to get you the City's Blessing for your Snubhorn Sentries. You will notice I've, at the moment, cut the other Ascend 1-drop. Sometimes those will go back in. This deck does have some flex positions. I will oftentimes, while I'm on the ladder, move things in and out of the list depending on what I'm playing against. For example, right now I'm running for Adanto Vanguard. This card can be very good against certain decks, but if you're running into a lot of Esper control with ways to either give it --/ or exile it, then the indestructible portion kind of doesn't matter, in which case sometimes this will come out and cards like Tithe Taker will go back in. Tithe Taker is a little bit more resilient and also can be disruptive. If I'm not including Tithe Takers, then I will put in even more 1-drops, believe it or not. So that is kind of the train of thought there. Unbreakable Formation, though it can be cast as an instant and protect your squad against board sweeping effects, it is most often played proactively in this deck. You want the +1/+1 counter, and then you want your cards to have Indestructible and Vigilance. It's just really, really punishing and aggressive mirrors. And then I'm running 4 Conclave Tribunals as the kitchen sink catch-all, like give me an answer to something I don't want to deal with. And that's the list. I really like it because it has very satisfying, very gratifying swing turns, as I like to call it. So when you flood the board and then you play your Loxodon or you play your Unbreakable and you get that really big, like, impactful play, I think it's more gratifying personally for my play style as opposed to, like when you're playing mono red, and I'm sure I'll do another updated video on that list. You win quickly or you lose quickly with that as well. I think that's another great deck for best of 1 climbing, at least early on. However, it's not as like splashy, right? It's not, there's no big flashy plays like there is in this where you get that really satisfying unbreakable top deck or something. So I've been enjoying this one a little bit more and playing it a little bit more as a result. But that's enough about the list. Let's go see the deck in action. All right, here we are jumping into a game. Good old white weenie, and this is about the best opening hand you can ask for with a deck like this. There is an argument to be made about you would prefer this to be Loxodon, but for the most part, 3 lands, 3 1-drops, and one of your buff cards is what you are looking for. So we're off to a good start. This, however, is interesting. It's a bit interesting. Now, we could start with the Sentry just so that we have a blocker, but we also want to be aggressive ourselves. And we're going to play a second Bodyguard to protect the Sentry. So I think that we're fine just starting with a Bodyguard. We expect them to play something, have this grow, and then they will swing. Oh, we found our Loxodon, so that's kind of nice. That is very, very nice for us in the grand scheme here. Now, they didn't attack, which means they're trying to protect their investments. So we're actually going to see if we can call them on their bluff here and get a free 2 damage in, which we do. Now, we have a decision to make the following turn, because we have our choice of Marshall or Loxodon. And the greed play is Marshall, then into Loxodon. However, we could, well, if we play Marshall, we could still follow up with Legion's Landing and Loxodon on the following turn. So I actually think that we're going to go ahead with the Marshall. Do our best to try to punish here. Again, they're choosing to not attack. They're trying to protect their squad. I feel like they're going to let these pass through. But even if they trade with one or both of them, we'll have more than enough value on our Loxodon in the following turn. We'll still get a 3-creature buff with the Loxodon. But if we can get... So we'll go ahead and say no blocks, because we do not want to lose this, even if we could theoretically block here. We don't want to lose it to a combat trick of sorts. So this is kind of nice because we can also get the value out of this, and then just get a 4-creature Loxodon. So it does end up only being 3. They sadly had the lightning strike, but them being stuck on only 2 lands is a big boon for us. Here we're going to go ahead and actually just pay for this Conclave. And get the concession, because we're going to come in for a healthy amount of damage. We also got the City's Blessing, and that is what we're looking to do. Like I said, that was a great opening hand. You had 3 1-drops and a pump card, and then we drew into a Loxodon. Can't go much better than that for us. Let's jump into another game just so that we can show off the deck a little bit more. Alright, so we're jumping into another game here with the white weenie, and this is a pretty good opening hand, not as good as the first game that we had. We do still have 3 1-drops and then a 3, right? So this isn't something that pumps our entire team, but this is good enough. We might draw into something that pumps the team, and then history is great at trying to get us the blessing, and the 2 snub horns can potentially help quite a bit with that. So here we're gonna play a little bit of defense with our first snub horn. And then we'll likely follow up with a bodyguard on our falcon the next turn. We want to protect this a bit. But this at least slowed down the bodyguard. So we're going to go ahead with a falcon, just because that gives us a level of evasion. And we're going to say no attacks, leave this back. And our opponent here, if they have something like a marshal, for example, could put us in a bit of a bind. But they play their own history. So we're going to have some very similar openings. Bit of a mirror. The Vanguard is currently a bit favoring them. We're going to answer with our own history, because we want to keep pace with them. And again, attack with our hawk, our falcon, our eagle, our winged friend. I say all those because throughout the courses of the game, even though I know it's a rust-wing falcon, whenever I'm playing this, I always call this thing a hawk or an eagle or something. Like, I never get it right. Title is right there, and I'm just like, it's the bird. And I think it's just because I run rust-wing falcon and healer's hawk, and so I use them interchangeably. But I know mentally that it's different. So our ideal top deck the next turn is a land or a Loxodon. A land is great because it allows us to play Sentry and another history, which will give us blessing on our snub horns, and then we can start really going to town. But we've got a bit of a decision to make here depending on what our opponent does. If they have a lackluster turn, I think Marshal is actually better than a second history for us, because it'll mean getting even more value out of this, and it gives us another knight for when this eventually triggers. But we do have a decision to make. And it looks like our opponent also has a decision to make. They are kind of taking their time. They've used a timeout. They are taking so much time. Now, during the deck talk piece, I did mention how I'm kind of heavily favoring evasion. This is one of the reasons why you do sometimes run into these stalemate boards, and whether or not you draw your pump cards can make or break a game. Alright, so they are just straight timing out, huh? We might just get a win on timeout concession here. Nope, they let it down. So, yeah. We're going to go ahead and play the Marshal. Gives us the blessing, which is fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and come with these because in order to answer these, they've got to do some multi-blocking shenanigans. And that still leaves us with 3 knights the following turn for when our own history triggers. But we want to be the aggressor here. And so their big buff to history goes, but unless, again, they have a marshal or something that buffs their squad, these will still trade, which is kind of nice. Alright, so they do have a marshal. So this is going to be a very strong swing turn for them. We're not going to take any actions right now. 5, 10, so that's actually not enough for lethal at the moment. So we could let this all go through if we wanted. And then just counter swing. They'll have 4 blockers. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attackers with the ability to create a fair number of blockers ourselves. We might use our own timeout here as we think through this. Alright, let's come to the blocking step here. I think that soaking this makes an awful lot of sense. And then we'll have to eat the rest for now, it looks like. It's a bit of a tough decision because of our hand, and we want to make sure that we're getting the value out of this. I didn't feel comfortable going all the way to 1 because that meant any attacker getting through next turn is an issue. Alright, so here we're going to play this bodyguard. And we're going to choose our own hawk that we will likely leave. Actually, you know what? We're going to choose the marshal so that we can attack with that as well. And then we're going to make our mind up about this after the fact. We kind of want to see what goes through. We need to leave ourselves enough blockers that when they potentially counterattack, we don't just outright die. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 if we leave that as is. Which is blocking all but 1 creature, which is entirely fine. So we're going to come with just these for right now. Now they're going to double block here, but we can, if we want, protect our marshal. And then just play another blocker, which is entirely reasonable. And that is what we're going to do. And we're going to do this because this will create another blocker and start the ticking time bomb for another very strong knight-based turn, if you will. And this should be pretty locked up with only 1 card in hand and those 2 creatures. We're not being threatened for lethal here. And we can just turn these all sideways and our opponent will lose. Top decking the Conclave also kind of guarantees the victory, but there you have it. So you got to see the deck in a mirror match. I think that, you know, we piloted that as best as we could. in that scenario, and it worked out. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video.